Starting us off with number 10 is the Churail. So Akshvank, the teller of the story, is Indian, and in Hindi and Urdu the word Churail means witch. His mum told him the story of her uncle in the 60s walking to his mother's place a few miles away from his own. Mind you, it took a while to get there and it was nearing 3 AM at this point. He went through a wooded area and met a gorgeous woman wearing a sari and asked where she was going this late, and she named a random place and he offered to let her walk with him so she'd feel a bit safer. He already should have known something was sus. No girl walks alone at 3 AM in a forest. A few minutes into walking, the uncle realized this woman's feet were facing the opposite direction, like WTF. Thankfully, he had heard many stories about monsters and ghosts like that, so he knew some tricks to keep her at bay. He lit a cigarette and kept it lit the whole time whilst thinking of some Hindu mantras in his head. They got near a mango tree when the woman disappeared and he heard the most disgusting screech ever. The woman had climbed up the tree and shouted "Tu bach gaya aaj" at the uncle, which means you were saved today. His uncle's advice to anyone that encounters a ghost at 3 AM? Never look behind you or they will get you. I believe you. I believe you. Coming in at number 9 is the Screamer. Redditor Fecal Trumpet confessed when he was around 10 or 11, his mum began waking up at 3 AM every night and letting out a blood-curdling scream. The user, his dad, and his brother would be terrified every time she did this, and she would always say she saw 3 tall shadows standing over her bed and that she would then have a nightmare about being attacked by an owl. She did this 4 times a week for months, and every night it was the exact same story. You'd think the woman would have gotten used to the owl attack by now, but clearly not. Either way, half a year later, the screaming stopped and all was rainbows and butterflies until the movie The Fourth Kind came out. The family went to see it, and in it the woman sees an owl, has a nightmare, wakes up screaming, and then talks about the 3 tall figures. Mind you, other than her boys, the mum hadn't told anyone about this, so how the hell was it so common and a movie? Apparently these 3 tall ghosts haunt not one, but many or all of us. Forget these actual ghosts, I can see a pile of laundry on my chair in the middle of the night and think that's a ghost. Like, there's just no hope for me here. At number 8 we have The Patient. This one's from Redditor Zerbo, who worked for an ambulance company with his partner. At the company, all the EMTs had many stories to tell about Rig 12, the haunted ambulance. The user himself had never had any paranormal experiences himself, so he didn't really believe the Rig 12 stories until he experienced it himself. One night, him and his partner were working in a rural community at 3 AM. Both of them were asleep, and a few minutes later he woke up to a muffled voice and he assumed it was his girlfriend talking, so he told her he was trying to sleep. Never get in the way of a man's beauty sleep, people. Never ever. Anyway, when he closed his eyes, he heard a deep male voice saying, "Oh my god, am I dying?" followed by a lot of heavy breathing. Both people shot up straight away, looking around and behind them for where the sound had come from. Then they heard the click of an oxygen bottle regulator, and initially they thought someone had maybe broken into the ambulance, but when they checked the regulators, they were closed. They hadn't been touched. Suffice it to say, none of them could get back to sleep afterwards. Filling our number 7 slot is the Angry One. This one's from Melissa, who said when she was young she truly believed she had a ghost in her house. Her cousins would come and stay over at hers quite a bit, and they'd stay up as late as they could, you know, just for fun, as cousins do. One night they were all chilling in the living room, and at 3 AM a glass of water just went flying off the table. Everyone was sure no one had knocked it over by accident, and trying to calm themselves down they blamed it on a gush of wind coming through a window or like an open door somewhere. Either way, the next few days around the same time, things kept happening. Cabinets opening and closing, forks and knives just on the floor. It was starting to get out of hand, and even Alyssa's parents were worried. So much so that they got a priest to come in and do a kind of house exorcism. After a few weeks, they found out an old woman lived in their house before them but was murdered by her husband. She was one causing all the havoc when people were up way past their bedtimes in her house. Alyssa's family moved soon after, but she still has nightmares about it, and honestly, so would I. Don't you worry, Alyssa, you are not alone. I'll have nightmares on your behalf. Now at number 6 are the Debaters. This story is from Marissa, who said she was staying at one of her friends one night, and amidst pillow fights and talking about boys, no, we don't actually do that at sleepovers, lol, but they slept quite late. But around 3 AM, Marissa woke up because of a noise. She was more than 100% sure she heard the kitchen cabinets opening and closing. It was so loud she went downstairs to check it out, but no one was in the kitchen, so she just assumed she was just hearing hearing things, or maybe it was the neighbors. She brushed it off and went back to sleep, and when she woke up the next day, her friend was crying her eyes out. Marissa asked her what was up, and she said she woke up around 3ish and heard people in the kitchen saying things like, "We are not wanted here anymore, we aren't important." Now based on Marissa, we know the kitchen was empty at 3 AM, so which Congress of Ghosts were having a meeting at that time, deciding they should probably not haunt this family anymore? I mean, civil, but still scary. Coming in at number 5 is my ghost. Yes guys, I try to include my own stories whenever I can because I feel like it just is more personal that way, and here is another one. Now it's not the typical paranormal ghost you're thinking of that flipped me from my bed or threw my cat against the wall. God forbid, please don't do that. This has happened to me so many times, it's actually scary. I'll just be lying in bed, it'll be 3 AM, and almost immediately I just start thinking about the ghosts of my past. Should I have really said that? Was dating him a mistake? Did I really look cute with braces when I was a teen, or was I just fugly? These are the ghosts that stay with you forever, people, whether it's 3 AM or 3 PM. At number 4 is the picture. This one's from Kayla, who said her friends were sleeping over at her place, and as a joke one of them said Bloody Mary in front of her basement mirror. Anticlimactic as hell, cause literally nothing happened, so after a while everyone just went to bed. At 3 AM, Kayla woke up because it sounded like someone was pacing around in the room next to them, which was weird because that part of the basement wasn't even finished yet. As she was processing this, she realized her friends had also woken up from the sound, but no one was ballsy enough to check it out, so they kind of just bundled together and ignored it till they fell asleep again. The next day, nothing was really out of the blue, so the incident was sort of forgotten until a few days later. Kayla was just going through her camera roll when she saw a really weird picture. It was a picture of her friend staring into the mirror as she said Bloody Mary, except with a super dark filter. She knew that wasn't Instagram worthy, no I'm kidding, she's sure as didn't take that picture, and after asking everyone that came and realizing none of them took it either, I think Kayla had a legit case of the ghost of Bloody Mary on her hands. Filling our number 3 slot is It, not Pennywise, although in this story I feel like Pennywise would be the better alternative to what these people actually faced. Redditor Scooter said during his sophomore year at college, he lived in a double dorm with 3 of his friends. One night his roommate asked him what he was writing the night before, and the user was confused. The roommate said, "You know, like around 3 I heard you writing something on your desk, but I thought it was a bit weird, so I didn't want to turn around and look at you." The user was shocked since he was dead asleep at 3 AM, so where was this noise coming from in pitch black darkness at 3 AM? A few weekends later, everyone went home for the weekend except one of the roommates. He was plugging his Xbox into the TV at night when he turned around and saw a black figure run across the room. He dropped everything and slept in another dorm till the friends came back, and you guessed it, that was also at 3 AM. When the user came back, he was talking to someone outside his door when the person just went white as a sheet. He said he saw something crawling on all fours behind the user, and the user pissed himself. The final thing he saw was the shape of a person made from mist hovering in their bedroom. It was just legs and a torso, but it was misty and hovering, aka a ghost. Whatever it was, it would only come out and show itself at 3 AM, and the boys quickly requested for a new dorm after. I wouldn't just request a new dorm, I'd like request a refund. Like, give me my res money back, I'm not paying for this. I'm not paying to get haunted. Now at number 2 is the girlfriend. Redditor Bill_Murray42 said a female ghost has been terrorizing him and his girlfriend for quite a while now. Their building was built in the 20s, so when a bubble on their bathroom ceiling expanded and then exploded, they assumed it was just old pipes. But when they brought in a plumber, he couldn't find a source of the leak, and it wasn't coming from the apartment above them either. All the pipes were working completely fine too, so it just made no sense. The same thing happened in their kitchen as well, and the leaking would actually stop when the plumber went into the house and start again when he left. But things got worse. The couple would hear booted footsteps in their living room, their door opening, and then his girlfriend waking up sweating from nightmares, all the while with the massive feeling that they're both being watched. One night his girlfriend woke up at 3 AM to find the user standing in the middle of the living room just spaced out. He had no idea how he'd gotten there other than maybe being possessed by something. When his girlfriend started going on work trips, the ghost would target him even more, getting into bed with him, wrapping her ghost arms around him to the point the user could actually feel it. They asked the ghost to let them know if someone was there, and 3 bangs inside their bathroom followed. They theorized a girl must have drowned in this bathroom long ago, hence all the water, but in terms of targeting the user, maybe she's just lonely. Purgatory is lonely people. And finally, at number 1 are 2 broken pieces. This one's from Eric Ogden, who said a few years ago he moved into an apartment on his own for the first time. Go you, Eric, I'm proud of you. In his bathroom there was a wooden board that covered a hole on the ceiling that led to his attic. A bit of a DIY solution, but the building was made in the 30s, so he wasn't too mad about it. A few months in, he came home from work, went into the bathroom and found that board broken in 2. It was a full inch thick, so either Bruce Lee broke it or something stronger did. He called his landlord and she said previous tenants had the same thing happen to them, but don't worry, she'll fix it. A month later, around 3 AM, Eric woke up covered in goosebumps. He felt like something was rubbing all over him, and before he could analyze it, he heard this dragging sound above his bed. He thought someone was living in his attic for sure, and after 5 minutes of growing a pair, he went outside with a cricket bat. Good move. I do support that, Eric. Again, he saw the board had been broken into 2, but at least the dragging sound had stopped. His heart calmed down for just a second, because after the dragging came the whispering. Children's whispers coming from the attic saying it's your turn over and over again. Then his budgie Dexter started screaming like he was being choked, and Eric had had enough and ran and sat in his car and waited till sunrise. When he went in finally, he found Dexter half drowned in the toilet, and when he called his landlord again, all she said was, "Oh wow, you heard the whispering too." That's something you should tell a tenant when you're leasing a place to them. Oh, by the way, it's haunted. Just let you know.
Number 10. St. John's Mercy Hospital. Oh, hospitals are a hotbed for all sorts of weird things. I mean, people die in them every day. There has to be a bunch of ghosts and ghouls hanging around. If you die in a hospital, it must be like waking up in the middle of Mardi Gras when you become a ghost. Thousands of people just confused trying to find their friends. That's basically every festival I've ever been to. So a hospital at 3 AM must be the best place to catch some eerie things happening. Well, this hospital had what looks like a ghost browsing through a magazine. I mean, that's not the scariest thing a ghost could do. I guess ghosts get bored in the afterlife as well. Well, this ghost kind of flips through some pages slowly, like it's browsing an IKEA catalog for some sort of paranormal bed frame, and then out of nowhere, the whole room starts getting tossed. Everything's flying around like a wrestler with a good insurance policy. Turns out this wasn't a ghost at all, but a tornado came barreling through the town and smacked right into this hospital in the middle of the night. Number 9. Summer night knocking. Summer nights as a kid were the best. School was done and you could stay up as late as you want, doing whatever. You could be out riding bikes, or you could just be binging food and watching movies until you pass out like a drunk bachelor. This Redditor was having a good night until there was a strange knock at the door in the middle of the night. It was submitted by Redditor Deadman V. He said he was chilling in his room late at night and he heard his younger brother calling to him from the living room. He went to check on his brother, and his brother told him that there was a knocking at the door, so Deadman V went to go inspect. When he looked out the window that's right next to the door, he saw a young boy smiling back at him through the window. The kid was probably 11 or 12 years old. This obviously freaked him out, so he ran up to his parents' room with his little brother to tell them what had happened. His parents went to go check if the little boy was there, and he was gone. Little did they know, they just let a ghoul into their home. No, I'm just kidding. The kid ended up being a neighbor, and he was sneaking out at night trying to spook people. The classic prank of a smiling kid at the front door in the middle of the night. Gets them every time. Number 8. Roadblock. When you're driving at night, you gotta be super careful. You can't see well, and your chances of running into a wild animal goes up tenfold. This was caught on a driver's dash cam. He was driving along when he comes across what looks like a roadblock set up with some traffic cones, but there's no cops around. Instead, there's a hooded man with some 2007 styled baggy pants who starts walking up to the car. Okay, if you're gonna try and pull this trick, maybe don't look like every dude who robs a convenience store and is late on his 5 kids' child support payments. As this rap video background actor starts approaching the car, the driver asks him a couple times what's going on. After a few non-responses, he decides that this is too much of a sketch fest, and he speeds off out of there. Thank God this guy was probably too dumb to pull off this heist for real. Number 7. Peacocks. Alright guys, I'm about to educate you. So this one was submitted to Reddit by Redditor Catch Aaron the Sly. She was visiting her grandma way up in the country, and the thing about her grandma is she has a bunch of pet peacocks. I can't wait to get old. You can stop caring about what other people think about you and be like, yeah, I want a bunch of peacocks because that's what I'm gonna do, because I don't care if people want to have sex with me anymore. I'm a peacock lady now. It must be so freeing. Well, late one night she was on her grandma's porch when she started to hear what sounded like someone crying out in pain. This started going on long enough that it scared the hell out of her and she ran inside. She found out later that peacocks cooing sound exactly like a person crying out for help. I bet you didn't know that. Number 6. Slender Man at a hotel. Didn't Slender Man start as some sort of Reddit rumor? I'm not really sure on this one. Please let me know in the comments because I know I'm gonna forget. But what I do know about him is he's supposed to be some sort of supernatural being that likes to eat people or absorb them, and he looks like the cross between a faceless albino and a guy with a wicked tailor. And he might have been spotted in this hotel. A security guard was up late one night when he saw what looks like to be a tall man walking in the background of security camera footage. The part that was really freaking him out about this is there wasn't anyone else working in the hotel at this time, and this tall skinny man was spotted in an area where only workers can get to. So was this a supernatural being, or was this just a mistaken identity? Number 5. Fence jumper. If you look longly out your window, most people think you're gonna look up at the stars and find true love. Well, sometimes you just see someone running for their life. Redditor Zappa_07 was peering out his window when he saw someone jump a fence into his backyard. This guy was running around all scared. He hid in his backyard and then jumped into his neighbor's backyard. I want to speculate on what's going on here, but I know a dude running from the cops when I see one. This guy was trying to make a break for it. Number 4. Gas station. So this story originally popped up on Reddit and it was super weird. It's about a gas station. One of the employees and the owner started noticing that motor oil was going missing. They had suspicions that it was one of their other employees, a guy named Jeremy. Never trusted Jeremy. So they looked over the security camera footage and they saw what looked like a loop, because the same customer would come in every couple hours and take some motor oil. They then noticed that it wasn't a loop at all, but it was Jeremy coming in every few hours. It was super creepy. They were gonna confront him about this the next day, but he never showed up for work, like he knew that he was gonna get caught. Later, the FBI came in to ask questions about him, and he may have been linked to an arson involving motor oil and the death of an entire family back in 1996. Oof. Number 3. Cleaning home. I found this one written by Redditor Rolly Kirby Derby. She was home alone one night because her parents were out at a work function and she knew they weren't going to be home until late. She wanted to do something nice for them, so she decided to clean the whole house. She had all the lights on, she was playing music, and she started to hear a door creak open. She went to go look at it, and it was the door to her sister's room, but her sister wasn't home. Jokingly, she said, "Shut the door already," and then the door slammed shut. She freaked out, went into her room, and waited for her parents to get home. Number 2. Working from home. Here's a hot tip for people out there if you're home alone. Lock your doors. Hell, you should lock your doors even if your house is packed and you're expecting more people to come over. You don't want some lame stranger to wander into your house and kill the buzz at your party. Well, Redditor Hawk Singer was working home alone late one night, all by himself at 2 AM. I know this list says 3 AM, but I'm not going to care about 1 hour. I like this story too much. This is when he heard the coats move on the coat rack next to the door. This would normally only happen when someone opened the door, but it was way too late to come over, so he figured it was his cat jumping onto the coats. He went over to go grab his cats when he saw a man standing in his living room. Was he drunk? Was he crazy? We don't know. All we know is that he started yelling about where all his stuff was. He was very upset about that. So Hawk Singer had to act fast, and he grabbed the katana that his mom bought him for Christmas and chased this guy out of his house. That's how you deal with problems, baby. You threaten them with a sword. And shout out to his mom for getting him the best gift that he's gonna have to hide from every single girlfriend. Number 1 on our list, haunted home. So if you're being kept awake by spirits for 6 nights in a row, you should probably start looking for some listings. Nobody likes bad roommates, living or dead. This guy was having just that happen to him and decided to vlog his whole experience. The best part about this is he said he would continue to vlog the experience if people continued to like and subscribe. If you're gonna put yourself through some spooky torment, you might as well get paid for it, baby. The freakiest part about this video is when his phone flies off the receiver.
figure out what's going on, and it's happened a couple times already. And I don't know.
Now I understand how this guy is able to endure this paranormal punishment. He has a corded home phone. If he's willing to put up with that, that means he's willing to put up with anything. Those things are so annoying.
Number 10 is the figure. This one comes from Johnny, and no, not Johnny from Top 10 Nerd, just regular other Johnny. He said when he was 14 he lived in this house that had an attic which would always quietly creak. No one ever went up there since it was always locked, and it was filled with just random ancient stuff anyway, so no one was even bothered either. One night Johnny's parents were out of town and his friend Cameron slept over. They played video games, ordered pizza, watched TV, etc. and stayed up late. You know how little boys do. But by 3 AM they heard what they thought were footsteps in the attic. Scared to death but also too nervous to check it out, they just convinced themselves it was the oldness and distracted themselves by watching TV. 2 minutes later they heard a huge slam and the sound of shattering glass in the kitchen, so they ran in there to find nothing. Nothing was broken, nothing was out of place, it was just the strangest thing. 10 minutes later they heard super loud footsteps in the attic and thought, okay, now we have to check it out. So they got a flashlight and walked towards the attic stairs, and as they pointed it up towards the top of the stairs, they went pale. At the top of the stairs was a tall black figure that was about 8 feet tall. They just stood there watching them and grinning at them, and then it just disappeared into thin air. The boys called the police and they found no traces of anyone in the house. But that could have easily been like Slenderman's brother or cousin, I swear to God. Coming in at number 9 is the lady in the pink dress. Always a lady, and I'm pleasantly surprised she's in a pink dress this time, not a white one. Shared by Reddit user TwistedSTL636, they said they had a huge Catholic family and this story happened to them in the 80s. There was a huge party at the user's grandma's house, and his great grandma lived with her grandma as she had dementia, and so she needed the care. A bunch of aunts and uncles were cleaning the house after the party, and the great grandma went to her room. At about 3 AM she came out and she said, "There's a man outside my window." The group go to her room, look out the window, and find no one. Outside the window was just a bench, and so blaming it on her dementia, the group told her to go back to sleep. She came out literally a second later again saying, "There's a man at my window," and again the same thing happened. They went to the window, checked, there was no one there. They finally asked her what she was seeing, and she said he wanted her to come outside and meet the pretty lady on the bench wearing the pink dress. At this point they went out and actually searched outside and found nothing, so one of the aunts actually ended up sleeping next to the great grandma, you know, for supervision purposes. The next day the user's grandma gets a call saying the great grandma's sister died the night before. The grandma asked some questions, you know, like what happened, was she sick, etc. And the family replied saying, "We don't know, but she definitely saw it coming since she fell asleep in bed wearing her favorite pink dress." At number 8 we have the eyeless boy. This one's from an anonymous guy who shared that when he was 10 years old he woke up in bed at around 3 AM to the sound of someone coming into his room and sitting on the edge of his bed. He assumed it was his mum, but when he opened his eyes, a boy without eyes was just sitting there. Black holes for sockets, just straight up sitting there. They stared at each other for a while and then the guy blinked and the boy was gone. 5 years later his girlfriend came over to do some work and she slept over that night. Again at around 3 AM she suddenly sat up, pointed to the corner of the ceiling and then went back to sleep. When he finally got her awake she said, "On the wall I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there in a Spider-Man pose just staring at me." And remembering the boy he had seen 5 years prior, he freaked out and told her the story. Now fast forward another 5 years and at this point he has a 2-year-old kid with the same girlfriend. They were living in his old house and his daughter started waking up at 3 AM every night and talking. But she'd say the same thing every single night, and one night the guy just playfully asked her, you know, like, "Who are you talking to?" And she said, "It's a little boy, he's nice, he's lost and looking for his mommy." And honestly I didn't even feel bad for the ghost kid until that, like that's so sad. That broke my heart. Either way the daughter kept seeing the little boy every night till the family eventually moved house, so there's that. But I wonder what happened to his eyes though, that's a bit That's a bit sus. Filling our number 7 slot is the neighbor. This was from Redditor Racing Barracarts, who said their neighbor died a month ago, and after she died, really weird things started happening in the user's house and her other neighbors' houses. The user started hearing shuffling up and down her hallway at 3 AM, and she assumed it was always her roommate, but then she found out that her roommate worked overnight, so he was never even home at that time. The roommate moved out and things went even more downhill. The user started hearing a knocking at her front door every night at 3 AM. She'd check outside and no one would be there, so initially she just thought she was being ding-dong ditched until one time. And yes, we've all ding-dong ditched, let's face it, let's admit it right now. This one time, the knock came, she went to check, no one was there, and as she was closing the door, the knock came back again, and the door was partially open, so she knew for sure there was no one outside. After that, the user would sleep 2 hours a night max because she was so scared. Other things started happening, like her windows would slide open, her drawers would close by themselves. Months later, her and her fiance were about to go to bed when they saw a shadow figure run into the room, into their closet. A few minutes later, it came outside and lay in between them and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" As clear as day. Now the ghosts and the occurrences aren't the neighbor who died, but they all did start because she died. Now all the users' neighbors claim the knocking happened to them too, but as old grandmas, they all just dismissed it as ding-dong ditching, which it's not. Now at number 6 is Bill. This one's from Reddit user CallMeBlue213, who said 6 years ago he was visiting some family in Alaska. He borrowed a car to drive there and ended up losing control and hitting a tree. It was absolutely freezing and there was no point staying in the car any longer, as it was 3 AM now and the windows were smashed, so it wasn't even warm inside. He went outside and saw some headlights coming his way and flagged the car down. It ended up being a trucker named Bill, who thankfully dropped the user off at a small town 10 miles ahead. When the user got off, he said his thank yous and his byes to Bill and then went into a little restaurant to eat. He told the waitress that a trucker named Bill had helped him, and she said that was impossible, since only one trucker drove down that road called Bill and he had died 6 years before that. Chills went up his spine, goosebumps covered him completely. The waitress even described Bill for the user and the descriptions matched completely. Good guy Bill. Honestly, I don't mind ghosts at all when they're nice and helpful like this. When they're mean and possessing you, that it's just like, no, there's no need for that, man, like stop. Coming in at number 5 is the motion detector. This one comes from Daniela, who said there are motion detectors all over her family house. For a solid 3-month period, Daniela lived alone in her house while her dad lived with his girlfriend. One night she was sleeping at the girlfriend's house and at around 3 AM the burglar alarm went off at her own house. The police informed them the motion detector had gone off in Daniela's dad's room even though no one was there. Her dad assumed it was broken and had the whole system replaced, but the same thing happened a few days later at the same time. He replaced it again and it happened again, and after that point they just gave up. Each time it went off at 3 AM and no one would be present in the room, and Daniela was 100% sure it was a spirit of her mum who had passed away when she was younger, because according to her, she's haunting them because everyone they knew hated her dad's new girlfriend, so it was probably like a warning sign or something. At number 4 are the eyes. This one comes from Lily, who said that when she was around 4 or 5 years old, quite scared of the dark, so she'd sleep in between her parents. Her parents' bed was right in front of the bathroom door, and one night she woke up at 3 AM and just couldn't get back to sleep. Now she sat up and looked into the bathroom and saw a huge pair of red and orange glowing eyes staring back at her, almost burning a hole in her because of how laser focused they were. Lily tried waking up her parents, but they just wouldn't wake up. She started freaking out when she heard a woman's voice calling out to her from the bathroom. She assumed the nice voice belonged to the ugly eyes, and although she doesn't remember what it said, they were motherly things. Either way, she was horrified, and the next day she told her parents what had happened, and they told her it was a nightmare. Of course they did. Of course they said that. Honestly, I feel like it could have been like the ghost of a scorned mother who lost her own child and was trying to like abduct Lily maybe. Like it was saying motherly things, it was staring holes through her, like what else could it have been? Do you guys have any thoughts? Let me know. Filling our number 3 slot is the melody. This story is from Roy, who said he was playing on the trampoline with his friend Jay, and Jay was telling him how his sister sometimes hears their grandparents' piano play by itself when she's home alone. Mind you, they were hanging out at Jay's grandparents' house that day, and so Roy was like, that's bullshit. and didn't believe him. Later on, Roy went in to get his iPad, and as he was making his way downstairs to the front door, he starts hearing the piano play. It wasn't just a random few notes. Roy was out here listening to some Für Elisa like melody. He ran out of the house and found Jay's dad outside painting the house, not having heard shit. He gave Jay the iPad and told him that he definitely believed him, and they went about their day. That night, Roy was sleeping over and everyone was asleep in the house when around 3 AM, Roy started hearing the piano play again. He wanted to see it in front of his eyes to really know it wasn't a hoax, so he made his way to the basement where the piano was. He opened the door and went inside and literally watched this piano play itself. The door behind him closed and then wouldn't open again, and Roy just stood there scared as hell watching this piano play. 5 minutes later, when the piano stopped, the door opened and he ran upstairs and cried. The only people who knew how to play the piano were Jay's grandma, who was dead, and his grandpa, who didn't live in that house. Jay told Roy how his grandma always wanted to play for him, but he was always too small and would run around and just not listen to her. Well, she sure as shit made Roy listen, didn't she? Just locked him in the basement there. Please don't lock it, grandma, that's a bit scary, isn't it? Just let him hear you play. Now at number 2 is Happy Birthday. This one's from Reddit user bhoppy20, who said right after he graduated college, he was staying with his girlfriend at her sister's house. They slept in the basement while everyone else slept in their own rooms, and at around 3 AM he gets woken up by the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs to the basement. Curious as to who would come down at that time, he opened his eyes to see a man with long dark hair sitting at the foot of his bed. Mans look like a moonlit anime character out here. Either way, he was shocked but also adult enough to assume he was just sleepy and seeing things, so he just went back to bed. The next morning he told his girlfriend about his dream and she freaked out and said, "Oh my god, we forgot to make a cake for my brother," except she only had one sister. Apparently, years ago when she lived in Vietnam, her parents had miscarried her little brother, and so to honor him they would bake him a cake every year on his birthday. But the night before they'd forgotten to do so the whole family agreed the boyfriend must have seen the brother all grown up and sad about not getting his cake that year. The boyfriend was also pissed he had no idea about the brother to begin with, but that's a fight for another day. And finally, at number 1 is Slenderman 2.0. This one's from Redditor B4455, who said when she was 7 years old she shared a room with her youngest sister. One night their parents had put them to sleep, but she just couldn't fall asleep. Her sister was fast asleep while she was just staring at the ceiling. Story of my life, honestly, I do that all the time. Either way, after staring at the ceiling, then the walls, she looked at the clock and realized it was 3 AM. She decided to, really just close her eyes and try her best to fall asleep. Before she did, her eyes scanned the door and saw that someone was standing there. An enormously tall figure, as tall as the doorway itself. It had long arms and legs and had no facial features whatsoever. It was just glowing yellow, not moving, not talking. She hid under the covers because at that age that's the best protection you can think of, and when she looked out again it was still there. She did this twice more before screaming her lungs out. Her dad ran into the room straight through the figure and asked what was wrong. The figure had disappeared and she never ended up seeing it again, but the sighting scarred her so much she still can't sleep alone or with the lights fully off. Extremely tall, featureless, long-limbed man figure. That is most definitely Slenderman himself. Confirmed. It's him. He got into the house. He's out of the game. I'm kidding, I know he's real. I know it's not just a game.